All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. Today, I have a special guest. I have Susan Walsh, who is the queen of uh, data, dirty data, data cleaning, data quality. She's also the biggest Robbie Williams fan of the world. Behind me. No, just kidding. And so let's bring her in. Hey,
Hi,
Susan.
how are you?
Hi, good. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's nice to have a chat with you.
Uh, Same here. Let's say quickly hello to our audience. Hi, everybody. I already see Atlas here. Hello. And Kate. Hey,
Yay!
Kate.
You
If you see
can't
this
push me
comment.
under anything from here.
So, yeah, if anybody has a question, and I'm guessing with Susan, there will be a lot of questions because she has very interesting topics.
Oh, yeah.
And put them in the chat. We're going to answer them. I'm going to be here. Yeah. Susan, for everybody of my people who maybe not so familiar with what you do, can you say a few words about what you do?
Yes. Yeah, so I fell into data by accident completely. This was about 11 years ago. Before this, I had a clothes shop and it didn't work out. And I racked up so much debt that I couldn't even afford to go bankrupt. I had to save up for 6 months, £600 to go bankrupt. And I just needed a job desperately. And I found an ad online to go and work for a spend analytics company, classifying spend data for procurement teams. And I thought, yeah, that would be a nice, filler job until I get something else. And I ended up spending 5 years with them. I grew a team of 14 people, managed all the projects, classified all kinds of different types of data. And then eventually that business got bought, and I didn't like moving from a really agile startup to a clunky corporation. And so because I hadn't come from a procurement world or the data world, I didn't really know where I could get a job doing the same thing. So I decided to set up the Classification Guru, and that was 6 years ago. And since then, I've been working with clients mainly in the procurement space. So we still classify spend data, normalize suppliers, and build spend taxonomies. But since then, it's grown arms and legs, and now we clean CRM systems, ERPs, supplier information, addresses, databases, pretty much everything you can think of. All the really horrible, messy jobs that nobody else wants to do, we'll do them. And I'm
Okay.
based in the UK, but have clients all over the world. So it's not just a UK problem.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Does it? So the companies that you're working with, are these also like these larger corporations?
They are global brand name companies that you would
Okay.
know. However, I can't talk about most of the companies I work with because they don't want to admit that they have a problem. So I have to stay under the radar.
But that's actually something that is very interesting and fits to data engineering because people always ask like how can I prepare for becoming a data engineer, how can I do real world problems. You usually don't know about the real world problems because no company is saying we have problems with this, with that, and with that. And so
I get asked all the time, how can I practice? How can I get experience doing this? And the advice that I normally say is go on a freelancer website and find those really crappy jobs that pay no money and get lots of practice cleaning their dirty data. You won't make any money, but you will gain so much experience from it. That's how I kind of built my knowledge and skills up, just by
is that
doing that kind of stuff.
is in this area the data or the dirty data coming from people putting in weird stuff, or is
Yep.
that machine made?
No, data problems are 99.9% people problems because even the
Okay.
machine data comes from a person at some point.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
and unfortunately, a lot of the people who input data are not data professionals. And so I'm very kind of firm believer that we need to talk to them in less intimidating language, make it a little bit more, dare I say, fun. Um, so, things like I wrote, this is my book, Between the Spreadsheets, so it's a play on words. It sounds a bit kind of cheeky, naughty, but to get people who are not interested in this world, and I know it's hard to believe there's people that are not, we need to make it more interesting and less intimidating for them. So that's kind of my passion as well, is to get everybody on board with cleaning the data and the data quality, because it helps all of us in the end.
Yeah, that's true. Are you also helping with like UIs or basically the input designs? So because I'm guessing that's
No,
also a problem, right?
no, but it is, and I'll tell you the biggest problem, kind of UIs, but not really. When we search for companies to find out what they do so that we can classify them correctly, the number of websites, and we're talking the biggest of companies, who say, we are leaders in our field, we're experts in this area and have, decades of experience. They don't say which field they're leaders in. They don't say what experience they've got. And when you go to their services, it doesn't tell you what they do. It's a huge problem. So that's why I called the business the classification guru, because I wanted people to know straight away from the name what we did. And then I've been pretty passionate about making sure that my website is very clear about what we do as well, because it's a real frustration for us when we're trying to figure out what a company does. And there's there's pictures of buildings and stuff, and what they do has got nothing to do with buildings.
So how can I imagine the work as a person who's doing data or who's doing classification? Like what
Okay, let's take it to your personal bank statements. So what you'll have, and normally it'll all be in one line in your bank statement. When it's a business, you'll have the company name and then the invoice description. So what you might have is McDonald's and a Big Mac, or it might be Uber and it's been a journey. And so, whereas on your bank statement, it's just like one thing, not broken down. Spend data, well, like staples or office supplies, you'll have like pens, pencils, paper, notepads, binders. So we'll classify those individually. So to different levels. So level 1 might be facilities, level 2 might be office supplies, and then level 3 might be desk supplies, printing supplies, and then you could go to level 4 or 5 even, depending on how much detail you need. But it's so that procurement people can go to their suppliers that they're buying these things from and say, well, we did 10 million with you last year. We want better rates when we're buying pens and pencils and paper from you. We'll consolidate these 5 suppliers into one, and we'll give you all our business if you give us a big discount. So that's what they're doing with that kind of thing. But you can do it yourself with your own banking app. You can categorize your spend by marketing, professional services, and travel. It's exactly the same. So you could even try it in your own finances. Might give you a fright though.
I know that from my company, because my wife is doing the accounting. She's the accountant. And she's also in charge of, basically, she has a program that gets all the bank statements, automatically downloads them, and then they need to be classified into where does this go into which account in the accounting software. And like there are, I don't know, 20 accounts. And you have to know this needs to go there and this is this. And like,
so can you imagine on a business scale, it's huge. And those little charts of accounts are too generic and too vague, which is why you need to go into like more detail. But it's really important, and it can also help with things like fraud as well. The bigger the company, the more likely you are to have things like fraud going on. And if you're not monitoring what's happening, then it can easily slip through the net.
Did you have such cases before?
I wouldn't say I've ever discovered massive fraud, but what you do find is, and you've probably worked for large organizations too, you get a company credit card for when you go traveling.
Mm.
And I've seen underwear, shoe shining, chocolates, alcohol, makeup, things that you shouldn't really put on your company expenses that go on there. So there are little things, but also even things like people will just pay for a subscription for Adobe or MailChimp or LinkedIn on their card. And what they don't know is their business already has like an agreement in place to buy it cheaper through the company.
Yeah.
So they're then paying even more on the credit card for something that they already have for free. So yeah, lots of interesting things like that.
Yeah. I know that with the company credit cards, it's sometimes difficult. I th- uh, because when I had mine from Bosch, but I think that was a bit different. Because this in the end this also went to my account. But there were times when I had to use the company card because like I forgot my personal one, or then
Yeah.
then also there
The
were
thing
different.
is, so what I tend to see and can see is patterns in data. So if it was one person, you would be able to tell from a pattern and trend in the spend. Like if they were doing that every week,
Yeah.
like buying their newspapers, which you think, oh, it's not much money, so nobody will notice. But over
Yeah.
the course of a year, how much does that add up to? Hundreds of pounds? And if every single employee did that, then that's thousands. It's the little things that they think
Yeah.
will kind of
Yeah,
slip under the net.
if it's once or twice, it can be an error, or like this can be fixed easily. But if
Yeah.
somebody
I
does it
mean,
all
I've
the
I've
time,
done it too for my own business. It happens occasionally,
yeah,
but it's the other way too. I couldn't pay on my business card, so I had to pay on my personal card. Sometimes when I go to the US, it won't let me tap. It needs to do the chip and pin, but then they don't have the chip and pin, so I
mm,
can't pay for something. So
yeah.
yeah. So
I,
that's
I think
kind
it
of what
comes
we
then
do.
back to the accounting again, right?
Yeah.
If it's a personal thing, then yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's the CRMs, you see. So you've
Ah,
probably got a mailing list. I've got a mailing list. A lot of people watching will have mailing lists.
yeah,
And if you've had one for a number of years, you end up with Robert Smith, Bob Smith, Rob Smith, maybe one email, but two different addresses, a couple of different phone numbers. And so you end up with like 5 versions of the same record.
mm,
Even things like people putting in addresses. If it's Avenue, how do you spell Avenue? The full name or the abbreviation AV? And then you end up with multiple versions of the same addresses. And so we will go through and tidy up all that. And yes, there are tools out there that can do that, but there's still always that part that the tech can't touch that has to be done by real people. And that's where my team and I come in to save the day. I
yeah,
call us the trash people of the data world. Think about it. If you didn't
why?
get your trash collected every week, society would literally fall apart. Like there would be rubbish everywhere, disease, like things would just fall apart. It's the same with data in your organization. If you're not keeping it clean regularly, like your organization will fall apart at some point.
It's a bit like data lakes. If you just
Yeah,
keep putting stuff in and like nobody takes care of it, we'll get
it's a
just a
swamp. Yeah,
pile.
before you
Yeah,
know
a
it.
swamp, a pile of data where nobody knows who is responsible, who will put it there. Are we still needing this? Yeah, it's
That's a great point, actually. Responsibility is normally a big issue. Nobody wants to take responsibility for looking after something.
yeah. I'm guessing like if you have I'm guessing you're using HubSpot and these systems. You're
I got banned from HubSpot many years ago
what?
because guess what? Because of dirty data. I belonged to the Institute of Directors, and they have a database. So I got a database of IT people, finance people, and procurement people. And I put these lists into HubSpot and I sent them an email. And the bounce rate was so high, they cut me off. They said, you're spamming people. No.
Okay.
So I have never looked back. And then went to MailChimp because everyone was talking about, oh, I use MailChimp. And then they started limiting the number of free users. So I moved from MailChimp to MailerLite, which is what I'm on now. But actually, I quite like that more. They've got a much more user-friendly kind of template than MailChimp. But there's so many different options out there now.
I went from for my company. I went from MailChimp to ConvertKit.
That's I've heard a lot. I know
It's
a lot
not
of people
cheap.
use that.
It's not cheap, but it's a good tool. I just
Yeah.
if you come here from the email I just sent out, that was through ConvertKit. Yeah, but your clients they're using stuff like HubSpot and these things, right?
HubSpot, yeah. And no matter what they say about, you can use tools to clean up within the tool, they still needs cleaned up.
How is that? There was a question about this. So how are you doing this? Are you then going into these systems and like by hand?
Never, ever, ever go
How does
into the
that work?
system. So we always ask for exports.
Okay.
We always create new columns and put the clean data in the new columns. And we do that for two reasons. One, because then you can always trace back if something's gone wrong, because you can see the difference. But also from a value perspective, from the client's point of view, they don't know what a clean and a messy spreadsheet looks like. There's no difference to them because they're not looking at them every day. Whereas if you show them the before and the after, they can visibly see what you've done and how you've improved their data. So then they kind of see the value. And then they can import it back in. I mean, Salesforce, we get a lot of Salesforce as well, a lot of issues with data in there.
So it's from a format perspective, that's more the traditional. You get exports and then you work with these exports.
Yeah, and we don't use Excel. I know I talk about Excel a lot, but we don't actually use Excel in the business. It is risky. So we use a tool called Omniscope, which is an ETL and visualization tool in one. So we can do all our data modeling and the visualization in the one tool. We don't need to export it to BI or to Tableau or to Click. And I've developed a methodology on how to clean and classify using this tool specifically, which is quite unique to this tool. So it gives us an edge on what we're doing.
And then at the end, when you think, okay, now we got everything, then you basically do an export again for the customer, and they import then the changes. Right?
They can do what they want. And actually, a lot of times with procurement specifically, they get their data from the finance system, but the finance people need a different view than the procurement people. So they end up doing their own stuff over here that's separate to the finance system so that they can get what they need.
Interesting.
Which I know is creating silos, but for them to do their job properly, until they develop a tool where you can have procurement and finance sitting happily side by side, that's how it's going to be. Sorry, I just saw somebody say OmniBoost. It's Omniscope. It's visokio.com is the website. Visokio.com.
Yeah, because Kate was asking which tool do you use most for data classification. I'm guessing that's the tool.
Yeah, and honestly, you can move and filter and do wizardry in a way that you can in any other tool I've worked with. It's quite special.
Here's a question, Susan. I know these are my initials, but that it's not me. No, this person.
Please tell me there's more than one person watching this.
He or her. It's a very old OG like viewer of mine. I don't know, like 2-3 years or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So the question was, how did you get your first clients? That's because
really,
people.
really interestingly, actually, I didn't get my first client for 10 months in my business. I was at the point of nearly having to get a job when 3 projects came in, and I'd actually accepted a job offer and started a job when I got the 3 projects, and I stayed at the job for a month, but because I found very quickly that people were really interested in my services. However, nobody else was doing it as a standalone service. So people weren't out there on Google looking for data cleaning services because
Mm,
nobody else was doing it. And so I started, messaging some people on LinkedIn. And again, they were interested, but it wasn't the right time. And so I realized pretty quickly that me calling or emailing or messaging 100 people a day wasn't going to get me very far. It would be better to position myself as the go-to person when you have a problem. And so that's when I started kind of posting more and experimenting more on LinkedIn and sharing knowledge. And up until that point, I really had focused just on procurement people.
mm,
But as soon as I started talking about data stuff, the data world kind of was like, yes, yes. And I was so scared in the beginning because I knew I was very good at my specific corner of data, but I've never claimed to be an expert in coding or data science or that. And so I kind of had quite a bit of imposter syndrome at the start. Like I kept saying, I'm not a data person. Why do these people want me in their community? And I had to do a lot of work with my coach actually to kind of realize that I am a data person. I just specialize in a very
mm.
specific area. So yeah, 10 months and it was just patience, a bit of luck, and even now it's still patience, a bit of luck and timing. My lead time for getting a client can be anything up to from 6 to 12 months. It's never a like a course, you're not going to instantly buy it and then use it. It's okay, we've got a problem and we need some budget for it. And
Mm.
even I don't know what it's like in the data engineering world, but getting budget for cleaning data is pretty non-existent unless there's a crisis and then suddenly they find money from somewhere to fix the problem.
Yeah, yeah, because usually if there is money, or if there's something where companies can make money, it's very easy. You get budget very easily for it. But if it's something like, okay, we have a problem or we can improve, oh, it's very, we don't have any money. Pockets are empty usually.
Yeah, yeah. And even things like classifying spend data. Like if they went to one of the big consultancies, they'd be talking hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars for the services that I offer. Mine's are maybe like 50 to
Mm,
100K, not even that much. And yet they won't invest in it. And they could literally save millions and millions of pounds, but they won't invest that little bit at the start. It's crazy.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the problem isn't big enough, right? It doesn't hurt
Until it's
enough.
a crisis. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
it's
It's
not.
but so that was. Would you say your social media actually helped you get the first clients?
No, not the first one. Oh, actually, that's a lie. It was. I sent a message to someone on LinkedIn and she said, "You need to speak to my colleague." And that's and then from there it took 10
Uh-huh.
months to get the data. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
And
but
even now, we don't have a sales team or we don't do any outbound selling. All the business is via inbound, mostly via LinkedIn, but now I also
mm,
speak at a lot of events, so some of it's starting to come through that as well. But it's mainly LinkedIn still to this day.
isn't it cool?
It is. I have been coasting it. Not coasting it, but we're project-based work, so we can go months without any work. And it's very the income is like that. It's not steady at all. And we nearly went under this year. We had cash flow issues. Um, but something always comes around just when you need it.
Hmm. it's meant to be.
But you have to have pretty much balls of steel to ride it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, for me, it's the same thing with my students or with my academy.
Yeah.
I need to talk about it. I need to show people how I can help them and show them the benefits. And there are
Yeah, I
months where people are more on vacation, and then there are months
yeah, I
where
I launched a course in January, and I was so excited because 9 people bought it in the first few days. And then I think I've sold 2 since January since then, because you really have to invest so much time and effort and work. But if I invest it in all that, then I'm not investing it in the higher revenue generating side of the business. So it's, you have to choose where to focus.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that's often so. Like there is something you're passionate about, but it's not the big money generator. And when, in your case, when you have people working for you, you like,
Yeah, yeah, then suddenly it's you gotta pay their bills as well as your
yeah,
own.
yeah, it's true. It's
I
true.
know, but then also, there's a flip side of that in that I wouldn't, this year alone, I spent 3 weeks in the US in May. I was in Orlando in September. I was at Big Data London. I'm off to Atlanta in another couple of weeks. I'm at the Alteryx
Cool.
event in next week in London, this week in London even. I wouldn't be able to do any of that if I didn't have a team to help with the heavy lifting in the
Mm.
background. So it's swings and roundabouts, but I am completely unemployable. I could never go back to a job.
It's funny that I had that. I wanted to ask you that a few minutes ago, but I forgot about it. Like now that you know both, and you
Oh
already
yeah.
answered this. Like,
Yeah, I could not. I mean, honestly, like I say, it's been a tough year, and I really thought, could I actually go and work for someone again? And the answer was no. I was like, I have to make this work.
yeah, yeah.
Or I'm
Also,
or I'm moving back with my dad in Dundee, that's it.
well, if that's what you have to
Hey,
do,
that is my
then
backup,
yeah,
backup, backup plan, so
yeah, yeah. It's I for me. It's also I learned that like I always had the feeling that I should do something on my own. But
yeah,
since I have my own company, to work on my own topics, I'm in charge of what I want to do and what I do.
yeah.
I could not imagine going back to working for someone.
I know, and I think I realize now that I think I always had that. I remember at university, I did one module called Entrepreneurship, and I remember thinking, "Oh, it would be great to, have my own business." I said, "But I don't, you need an idea." It's like, "I don't have an idea because I'm not a crafty, handsy person." And, at 20, 21, you don't have life experience to go off and be a consultant. So
Yeah,
I guess it was always there, but kind of parked in the back of my brain.
yeah. Yeah, for me also, I was learning. I went to university, then I worked at the job for 10 years, and through that actually led me to where I am now, right?
Same, I
Because
was in sales.
without sorry?
Yeah. I was in sales.
Yeah. But without that experience, would
I
you
wouldn't be able to do the classification now. Yeah.
it's very
Yeah,
interesting how this works out.
it is. Yeah.
So, now that we have been talking for a bit, what are some
Yes.
horror stories, Susan? Now that
Oh,
we've
I
warmed
know
up.
everyone always wants the juicy stuff. Actually, I saw a really good question, AK again. What's the worst project you've worked on? I don't know if you find this, but it's if you don't make it clear with the client or the person you're working with from the very outset, like what do you want and what's your end goal, it's a nightmare because you
Mm,
keep doing work for them and they keep changing their minds and then they keep wanting something else. And then you're like this is not in the statement of work. You're wasting all our time here. Another one is when they are so focused in on the detail. I had one client literally check every single line of work that we classified.
okay.
And it stood up. She found little tiny, tiny things like, and we're talking, we had classified something as travel, and it should have been travel train or travel bus, and it
Okay.
was just travel. So that's the kind of, so it stood up to the test, but that can be really time consuming and draining, and sometimes you have to focus on the bigger picture.
Hmm. So
But horror stories.
yeah, because that's more like a problem with people, right? So
So
or
data
project.
problems are people problems. I
Yeah.
said it.
Well,
There's a really great.
what I was thinking is like more on what were some horror stories with with the data actually, where like everything was messed up and like
Oh yeah, I've got loads of those too. So in the book, Treating Spreadsheets, Classifying, Fixing Dirty Data, secret plug, there is a data horror stories chapter, and a lot of people anonymously donated some data horror stories for the book, and then I chose the ones to put in. And one of my favorites is this company had sent out a mailing to all their members. But what had happened is somewhere on the spreadsheet, the data had slipped. So the address was right, but the name was wrong. So it went out to hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people. And the marketing department were really angry with the IT department about this, because they're like, you've cost us all this money. We're going to like internally sue you for this or charge you for it. And the IT department actually managed to fix some of it, but they also did some post analytics on it. And it turned out that even though the name was wrong on the mailing, most of those people still renewed their membership, even though the name was wrong. The mailer was enough to prompt them to renew, but it caused like real internal conflict. And I guess for me, the lesson there is I have a kind of triple check system. I'm always about check, and check again. And when I don't do that, that's when things slip through the net. So when we get some work in, it'll go to the team, it gets split out, it comes back together. One person will then look at the whole data set, check it, and then it'll come to me as well, just to make sure that we've, and you'll never get a perfect data set. Stuff will always slip through, but it's about minimizing the errors.
yeah.
I think there's too much focus on perfect.
That it's a bit of like expectation management, right?
Yeah.
If you have something like that lady you told before, I guess she expected like this needs to be 100% and exactly, and yeah.
That's not life, unfortunately. But I'd love to know kind of what kind do you in the engineering space, do you come across like common data errors, dirty data problems, things like that?
That depends. So it depends as well if this is user imported data or machine data.
That's
For instance,
interesting.
I had them when I was working back in the days when I did customization for SAP for a
Yeah.
machine execution system, and there were also these forms and these masks where people had to put stuff in, and that was always the problem, like people
Yeah.
putting in BS, and then your process doesn't work, and these jobs fail. And why does these jobs fail? It's like somebody puts it in. But also, when I was working on IoT projects, you have that problem where data is getting delayed and then the timestamps don't fit anymore. Or you
Oh.
have sensors and these sensors are measuring wrong stuff because they're broken. And like this kind of stuff you have to
Oh.
you have to figure out.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
so there are a thousand problems, especially in the IoT world.
You know what
That
they need though? They need the data coat.
the data,
The data coat, COAT, like a jacket.
yeah,
So I say make sure your data has its coat on. So it's got to be consistent. So let's use the same time and date formats around the world. Let's make it the same. How often, actually, if anyone's watching, I'd love for them to just put how they format their dates in the chat, because you get dashes, slashes, dots, no separators, you get day, month, day, year, you get all that kind of stuff. I've done that with single departments, and everyone's doing different kind of formats. So yeah, make sure it's consistent, and units of measure, UK versus or Europe versus US measurements, is everyone using the same things? Then make sure it's organized. So categorize that however you need to find your information easily. And then, of course, it's got to be accurate, but define what that is. In sales and marketing, that might be certain data points, whereas in finance, it's like we have to have the exact numbers right. So when you've got your consistent, your organized, your accurate data, it becomes trustworthy. And that's the words that you people always say, oh, we don't trust our data. So that's what they need.
Yeah, but like with the date, that's again, if you give people the option to add in the masks to just write the date there instead of having a selector, and in the back end it will always use the same format.
Yeah.
That's already a problem. Like if you give people too many options, make it like, oh, that's just a text field.
Yeah.
Like,
I know, because people say, drop down versus free text, and actually both of them have their benefits and their problems. It depends on what you're trying to find out. Because, in the categorization world, in drop down, people will often just choose the first thing. They don't even look at everything. And then you end up with loads of miscategorized data. It happens all the time.
yeah.
Look, we've got a couple of dates coming in. Yep, they're all different.
That's true. That's true. Starting with month, please. No.
And then, like a year, do you do 2 or 4 numbers for the year? There's so many different combinations that you can have for the dates.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. Just the date. Then how do you write the if you have to use a time zone? How is the time zone added? And
well, also, and what happens is you get it all in your nice data lake, and nobody knows that the dates are from different time zones, and then everyone just sticks everything together, and then you're like, oh no, how do we unpick this?
Yeah.
It becomes swampy very quickly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What do we have here? Any books you can recommend about data cleaning? Well,
oh wow,
you need to send me the link to that. I'm going to add it to the description afterwards.
Oh, cool, thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Any other book, like how or anything? What would you, in this field, what would you recommend that people look at?
Well, I wrote this book because there's a lot of stuff like cleaning in SQL, cleaning in, R, Python, but this is cleaning just in Excel in the basics. Like, get to know the basics in Excel first. Honestly, there's not much out there. Find some, I've got a more expensive course, but go and find a cheap course, like for a $5 and go and have a look at that. If it's a budgetary constraint, something that I do with my course, that is I give the attendees, students, a free dirty data set. So they go away and play with their own dirty data.
Nice.
Because you often hear like, oh, it's hard to get dirty data sets or real dirty data sets. So I have gone and dirtied a data set just for you guys. But yeah, it's honestly, there's not much out there. Most people learn on the job. Like you say, it's not, we can't talk about it because we don't have problems. They don't exist.
That's true. But generally, so because the data is very how should I say this? Let me try to phrase this right. The data is very specific for the domain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would it be if somebody wants to get into cleaning data, into like classification or stuff like this,
Yeah.
to okay, I'm focusing on a specific domain, on a specific industry, on a specific part. Does
You
that
would
make
be
sense?
amazed at how transferable it is. I mean,
Uh,
just from starting with classifying some data, I've worked in numerous different industries, on numerous different types of data sets. There are common kind of threads and processes that across it. You know, once you master one area, you can then start solving problems in other areas with the knowledge that you've gained.
hmm.
So it's more, it's again, it's lots of spotting patterns and things like that. I'm a huge fan of companies owning and managing their own data, because the more you look at it, the more obvious it is when something's not right. When you don't look at it for months at a time, it's very hard to spot when something's wrong. But if you're
Hmm.
looking at, you know, sensor data every day, and suddenly it's like same number, and then suddenly that number changes, you're like, oh, that's not right. I need to check that. Rather than a couple of months or a couple of weeks later, and you're like, oh, what's this? How did that happen? Not quite sure about that.
But there needs to be somebody there actually in the company who is in charge of this. I'm guessing that's also something where companies struggle, that to have somebody who actually tries to maintain this. Is this
Yeah,
right?
but it's like also like cleaning your house. You know, if you clean it every week, it's going to be easier to maintain than if you only do it once every month or every 2 months. It's going to be harder work. So while it feels like such a chore for so many people, if you get in that routine of doing it,
Hmm.
and you can then start to build in, once it's clean, you can start to build in automations and all kinds of things to help keep it clean.
Hmm. That makes sense. So, did you have any like let's just call it companies that needed your services for multiple times in a short while? Like,
So I've had clients who've come back for different areas that needed
okay.
clean. And then we do some regular kind of refreshes for some companies. Um, but I think they'd probably be too embarrassed to come back and say, we need you to fix it again.
Uh, because I'm guessing like you're doing when you are finished, everything is clean, but then somebody needs to maintain it, and
That never
it,
happens. Like it, you know, I'm pretty sure I know that happens. And literally, so like it's a bigger cost up front. But for a large organization, a couple of $1,000 a quarter to maintain it is nothing, you know. But oh, we don't have the budget.
uh,
But then you'll need 100 grand to fix it when it's all wrong.
uh, it's strange how this works sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a question. I have no idea what this means exactly. I'm guessing this is some UK thing. How do the contracts work? Are they essentially outside
Okay.
IR
Yeah. So
35?
I'm not a
What's that?
sole trader. I am a limited company and I have employees. So we are an organization. So we don't ever go on site. We never. I have hardly met any of my clients in person ever. I mean, 50% of the work we do is in the US. So we you know, we're not an implant in that organization. We take the work into the classification guru, and quite often we are juggling multiple projects at the same time, so that's not a problem.
What's this IR 35?
Oh, it's a minefield is what it is. It's the definition of whether you're perceived to be an employee or not. So you might be a contractor, but effectively you're being treated as an employee. So then you should be on payroll and you should be an
Ah,
employee and have, you know, pension and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people don't want to be employees, they want to be contractors.
We have that actually in Germany because
Yeah,
actually I don't remember now exactly how it's called, but uh, that you treat the other way around, that you treat people like contractors, and they want to be contractors, but they would count as employees
right.
if you make errors. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a dangerous thing.
yeah.
Okay, but yeah, if you're a company.
It's well, actually, yeah. So the tax people in the UK, I'm hoping to actually go and speak to them at their data science event online.
Hmm.
Do a little talk on dirty data, dirty tax data.
That's
I hope they don't check my accounts before I go though.
that's why we have accountants, Susan. So
Yeah,
we don't have to worry too much about this.
yeah.
Yeah, otherwise this would be like a minefield.
Yeah, yeah, even for me with my contractors also have engagements with other companies or other clients,
Mm,
because if they were just working with me, then that would be seen as an employer, could be seen as an employer-employee relationship. So it's so messy.
yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. They
Um,
just want to make as much tax from us as possible. That's what it is.
there's the thing. There's this saying. I don't know if you have this in England as well. If you're worrying about taxes, you're not making enough money. So
I like that.
I like to see it this way. Don't forget about the tax stuff
Yeah,
because you could argue about it for
yeah,
weeks. Like in Germany, it's crazy. But yeah,
yeah.
anyways, um, let's have one more question, and then we're gonna go. Um, any recommendations for starting caring about data quality in legacy code bases? Especially when there's no quality. Oof, is that a question for you?
Well, I think caring about data quality full stop is important, and you kind of have to talk to people and get them to understand the what's in it for me. And that each person, that will be something different, but it could be making your work life easier. It could be helping get a bonus at the end of
Mm,
the quarter or the year. It could be helping your friend out in a different department because, whatever you do makes their life easier. Um, it could be just freeing up time, so you could do other bits of the job that need to be done, because everybody I know nowadays is doing like one and a half jobs. Nobody has like the luxury of spare time. So, you know,
mm.
data quality is a great way to work more efficiently. So it's just getting people to see that and relate to it and understand it. And that's where the whole talking in different language to different people comes into play.
Yeah, I like that. That basically telling them or showing them that it's a benefit for them,
Yeah.
not another chore to do. Oh, that's nice. That's a nice ending,
Yeah.
Susan. Thanks very much that you're
Thank
here.
you.
We're here.
I really enjoyed that. I could have spoken for another hour on this.
Yeah, me too. But next time, all right.
Best
Let's
what's
do
it they
this again.
say? End on a high and things.
Exactly. We'll chat again here.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thanks everybody for being here. See you soon. Bye.